Thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Bell, and this is To the Point. You may notice some people wearing purple tomorrow because it marks the beginning of World Alzheimer's Month. Around the world, 55 million people are living with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia. Now, 6 million people live with the condition here in the U.S., and due to lack of research, little is understood about how the disease impacts minority communities. But refugees who escaped the horrors of the Vietnam War could play a vital role in changing all of that. Van 2 shares first of its kind research right here in Northern California that aims to understand how wartime trauma impacts the brain.
Along a 2-mile stretch of Stockton Boulevard in South Sacramento, you can sense the pulse of the city's Vietnamese American diaspora, Little Saigon. It was here during the late 70s and 80s Vietnam War refugees rebuilt their lives. But before this vibrant neighborhood came to be, a period of darkness.
If we are ever in a situation where we feel we will not make it, she would kill me first, and then she would go with me.
It's really dark.
UC Davis graduate Duy Nguyen recounts a suicide pact his mother made.
I think most people are shocked by that, and they're like, that's such a bad parenting, right? But I think if you're not in that situation, you cannot judge.
A situation of pure desperation, he says, to escape communist Vietnam.
Escape is the best word for it, because you were persecuted, you were hunted by the police.
After landing in prison 6 times while trying to flee, Nguyen says on the 7th try, his mother, then 23, paid a bribe to smugglers to take them on the ocean voyage. He was 5 years old.
Darkness is so prevalent in the memory.
It was a journey that took a year.
There was very little sunshine.
His family and 40 others trekking through jungles, wading through wave-whipping waters, and traveling in the cover of night.
We were always kind of encased in kind of a hole. They were filled also with like horrible memories of being like in a garbage truck, of witnessing an execution.
But along the way, moments of humanity. His mother giving him her food scraps, a stranger hoisting him above sea waters.
Those are the dominant memories of the trip.
Staying in a refugee camp in Malaysia until they reached a U.S. embassy in the Philippines for sponsorship papers to the U.S.
We arrived in the airport with 3 trash bags, and that was all of our belongings. And that's how we started America.
But as a newcomer, new challenges. Spending an afternoon with Nguyen and his fiancée, Nguyen tells us he didn't speak at school for 2 years, though he did at home. Selective mutism, they call it.
Yeah, I was kind of completely cut off from any kind of cultural lifeline.
This early disorder, he later realized, was a symptom of trauma.
Definitely, like the dominant theme of refugees is trauma.
It's one of many personal experiences that inspired Nguyen to pursue a career in psychiatry and serve marginalized communities, realizing he carried his trauma throughout his life. Years, even decades later, wartime trauma is still present and salient for many. Lê Thị Ngọc An's family was one of the first to leave Vietnam, with ties to the U.S. Embassy.
They were able to escape Vietnam a day before the fall of Saigon on April 29th. And they came to the U.S. And were sponsored by a church in Pennsylvania, and eventually moved to New Jersey.
She's now under her daughter's care in Davis, California.
Lê Thị Ngọc Anh.
Dr. Wan Meyer, an associate director at the Department of Neurology at UC Davis, says she began noticing changes in her mother as she approached 70.
One of her major fears and symptoms was just this paranoia about the Vietnamese communists or Vietcong being outside of our house. So she would always close the blinds, close the windows.
It was like her memories of war as a young woman were on repeat.
Clashes with North Vietnamese regulars in the central coastal plain near Bong Son.
She always talked about how she had to run underground when there were bombing raids in Vietnam. So that's when I felt like something was wrong.
Her mother was diagnosed with dementia 7 years ago.
While their short-term memory is impacted, their long-term memory stays intact.
While researching caregiver stress, she noticed troubling trends among Vietnamese Americans like her mother. Dr. Meyer says Vietnamese Americans are the fourth largest Asian origin group in the U.S. and are at a critical risk for poor physical health and mental health. A sizable portion are living with depression due to war and resettlement. Dr. Meyer is on a mission to learn more.
We really don't know very much about the prevalence of dementia or Alzheimer's in older Vietnamese. So I think that's really important for AAPI communities, is to have a voice.
She's leading the first of its kind longitudinal study of 500 North California Vietnamese Americans over 65 through a $7.2 million grant from the National Institute on Aging. The goal is to examine potential links between the Vietnam War refugee experience and cognitive disorders. Their cognitive health will be tracked over 5 years.
What is the prevalence of dementia in this group, and what are the factors associated with dementia? Specifically looking at adversity and trauma early in life.
Through a Sacramento partnership, some participants are being interviewed at Asian Resources Inc. headquarters in South Sacramento, in the heart of Little Saigon.
I think that what we learn from Vietnamese Americans might help us understand other refugees and their vulnerability to health and health disparities.
Myers says she was initially surprised there's a wait list to join her study, as mental health is a taboo subject in many Asian communities.
I think there is just that cultural value of saving face for yourself, for your family, for your community.
But what Myers and Nguyen have found in their work, representation matters.
So I think when you open that door,
When we do something like this, if other Vietnamese people hear it, they're like, oh wow, my story is being told.
to feel like there's someone else out there who's going through the same things I'm going through.
I'm not alone.
Van is with me now. And Van, this research focuses on Vietnamese Americans, but there is a greater purpose.
Absolutely. Right now we are witnessing waves of refugee crises. You see it in Ukraine, there's 10 million Ukrainians who have been displaced by the war, and in Afghanistan about 2.6 million people displaced. So the hope with this research is that in the future we can see how these experiences with wartime can really impact these groups of people, and how it can be maybe early diagnosed, and how it could really help folks in the future.
And what are some of the warning signs that people should really be looking out for?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in the process of reporting this and speaking to the researchers, really a lot of people just chalk it up to, they think it's a natural sign of aging, right? So they don't know the difference between Alzheimer's and just getting older and maybe forgetting something once in a while. There really is a difference between forgetting your keys and maybe being unable to retrace your steps. So on your screen, we did list some of the early warning signs from the Alzheimer's Association here. So things, of course, like completing familiar tasks, and we have a next slide with the other 5 things. So if you notice any of these symptoms with someone you love, or maybe someone in your family, yourself included, then they recommend that you talk to someone you trust or a healthcare provider.
All right, Van, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Parents and educators continue to protest staffing changes at Elk Grove schools. So we're going to break down why they are against the changes and what they're demanding from the school district. We've been covering the shortage of teachers plaguing schools in our state and around the U.S. The effects are being felt in Elk Grove, where parents and educators have protested multiple times over a staffing decision. Inclusion specialists who serve special needs children are now serving in other roles. So take a look at this. According to the district, 32 teachers were serving as inclusion specialists. Of those 32, 26 teachers were reassigned to teach in standard classes. The district says this had to be done because there aren't enough teachers to fill classrooms. But some parents say that this will affect student learning.
Being the parent of a child in the inclusion program, I mean, this is a big, drastic change. My son has been with the same inclusion specialist since kindergarten, and he's in the 3rd grade now.
Now, that was Brandon Morgan. He is the father of an autistic student and also a husband to a teacher who recently resigned from the school district because of this position change. He and other protesters presented a list of demands to the Elk Grove Unified School District ahead of the school board meeting that's going on right now as we speak. And these are the 5 things that they're calling for. The first, they want the inclusion specialist position restored. The group is also calling for improved working conditions, transparency when special education program changes are being considered, and a time limit for programming changes to occur. The group also says that they want the district to return to being a model for special education programming. Now, the district implemented the staffing changes about a week ago. ABC 10 reached out to the district to ask how the process is working, but we are still waiting to hear back from the district. The board meeting will be open to public input around 7 o'clock. It's about 6:43 right now. So, as you know, we have been looking into the root causes of the teacher shortages, not just locally, but throughout the state. And we're looking into what's being done to remedy the problem. So you can find all of those stories on abc10.com/tothepoint. Coming up, now that Queen Elizabeth has been laid to rest, what's in store for the monarchy and countries that are still under the crown's shadow? We're talking with a historian about the future of the British Commonwealth. You could be getting a check from the IRS very soon. The agency is refunding $1.2 billion with a B dollars in tax filing penalties for people who were late to file certain 2019 and 2020 returns. That money will offset failure to file penalties, and they say the refund will help taxpayers who were affected by the pandemic and also help the IRS get back on track for next filing season. Over 1.5 million people who already paid the late penalties will get an automatic payment, but there are some others who will have to take some extra steps. Those who filed forms in the 1040 and 1120 series are eligible, but you must file your late 2019 or 2020 returns on or by next Friday, which is September 30th. Now, some taxpayers will be disqualified because of things like fraudulent returns and court-ordered penalties. But if you are eligible, you should receive the refund by the end of September. And time is also running out if you still need to file your 2022 tax return. The extended tax filing deadline is coming up on Monday, October 17th. Now that Queen Elizabeth II has officially been laid to rest, the question stands, what lies ahead for the future of the British Commonwealth? I want to go ahead and bring in Michael Van. He is the professor of history at Sac State. Michael, our first question is, looking at the bigger picture, what role does the monarchy have in the 21st century?
Well, this is a huge question. The monarchy is a legacy of European feudalism. The history of Britain in the 19th and 20th century is a steady erosion of the rights of inherited privilege in favor of democracy. Yet we have these vestiges of the old feudal order, like the monarchy and like the aristocracy, still around. And the monarch doesn't exercise any real power. It's a symbolic institution that in many ways is looking for a purpose. So with the loss of Elizabeth, I think we're at a moment where it's very unclear what the purpose of the monarchy will be in the coming future.
And several countries have already expressed that they are ready to separate from the crown. Is the Commonwealth in danger of breaking up even more?
I would say so. I would say so. The previous monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, had a certain degree of charisma and was able to hold together and well, really invent and hold together this institution of the Commonwealth. And I think without her diplomatic skills and, again, charisma and also the sense of tradition of several decades of her as monarch, the central linchpin of the Commonwealth may be removed. And I think we are likely to see independent nation states spin off from the Commonwealth.
And will any of the countries of the Commonwealth, will they find it now easier that she's gone? I mean, did they really feel beholden to her?
I wouldn't say beholden, but I'm far from a monarchist, but she had an undeniable charm, which I think any objective observer would note that the new king, Charles III, doesn't have. He's not the same charismatic figure, and it's unclear what sort of diplomatic skills he may have holding together an institution whose time has probably come.
And speaking of King Charles, has he expressed that he'll take any action or change anything? What should people be expecting?
Well, that's interesting because a few months ago he did issue a sort of apology for the legacy of Britain's role in slavery and in colonialism, but it was rather vague, and it was unclear exactly what he was apologizing for. This is a touchy issue, whether or not the British monarchy can come to terms with the history of empire and the fact that many Britons today live in a post-colonial country, and they emigrated from former British colonies, areas that the monarchy had conquered. What does the monarch mean for them? What is the legacy of British imperialism for this post-colonial world? And it's very unclear what Charles III's relationship will be to this new reality of a post-colonial Britain.
All right, Michael, thank you for your insight. We really do appreciate it. Let's take a look at your Gilmore backyard now. Finally, the rain is gone, but we are still seeing cooler temperatures, thankfully. So taking a look at temperatures right now in the Gilmore backyard, Stockton at 76, Tahoe at 47. Quick check your 10-day forecast here. Fall is on the way. We are getting a little bit closer. You can see it's coming up on Thursday.
My name is Luis Baez. I'm Latinx and I am from Puerto Rico. I am proud to be Latinx because we bring all the flavor, all the culture, and all the loving everywhere we go. One thing that I would love for people to know about Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican culture is that we are more than just reggaeton. If you look into our other influences across bomba and plena, you will find all of our love and our light.
50 years ago, tragedy struck in Sacramento. The city was forever changed when a plane crashed through an ice cream parlor, killing 22 people. I spoke with 4 first responders who were all there that day, and for the first time, they are sharing their experiences and explaining how the crash changed our city. Here's a look at just some of what you'll see in our special edition of To the Point this Thursday at 6:30.
It was carnage. It was just disaster.
I heard the crash, I saw the smoke.
It came in on the county that a jet had lost its fuel tanks, and the fuel tanks had fallen into the Crossroads Shopping Center. So on a Sunday, I didn't even think about Farrell's being there.
We got trouble. You know, that's just the only way I could describe it. The flames and the explosion. At the time this occurred, this was the largest air-ground disaster in the history of the United States. To walk in and see an F-86 aircraft parked inside the restaurant, that was just totally bizarre.
You see hundreds of things in your life, but I'd never seen or have seen since so many kids in a location, perished. It's intense.
It continues to have an impact on you when you go to a scene like that.
The crash devastated the city, but after talking with local first responders, I found that something good did come out of this tragedy. A Sacramento fire captain who was inspired by the crash ended up creating the largest burn treatment center in Northern California. He proved that while scars may never fade, they do heal.
Cliff worked really hard to get the burn center here in Sacramento.
Cliff's heart was in this place. He was a great guy. His whole life was not only being a firefighter, but running this charity, and he founded it. And we wouldn't be here. In fact, the 2 burn units probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Cliff.
I really hope that you'll join us on this special edition of To the Point. Again, this story will be airing on Thursday at 6:30. We hope you had a great night. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We'll see you tomorrow. Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really love hearing from everyone, and I hope that you'll stay in touch. Reach out to me on Facebook at AlexBellTV, or you can email me at tothepoint@abc10.com, or you can even send me a text message at 916-321-3310.